So on the bench today we've got a Kenwood 255 2 meter multi-mode transceiver. It's come in with no receive reported, and before we get the lids off, etc., we noticed that when you undo the squelch, you turn the volume up, there's no sound coming from the speaker. And we've engaged RIT, and RIT is not working, so probably the IF shift's not working. Next thing is we're just going to put a signal generator on it and put 144 megs in, so we can do that while we're on camera fairly quickly. Go up here. 144 megahertz. And you can see that the S meter's gone over. There's still nothing coming out of the loudspeaker, so we're just going to plug in the external loudspeaker, just down here at the back. Yep. Turn the volume down, plug him in again. Yep. So the external speaker's working, and the volume isn't, so it's going full volume out of the external speaker. Internal speaker's not working. Front panel controls, the rotary ones. Now, long gone are the days where the volume control was simply a variable resistor with audio on the top end from the detector, and the wiper went to the audio amplifier. You can forget that. On these this type of radio, usually this is an analog pot. The voltage then goes into the main microprocessor, which sends a bit stream out to a volume adjusting integrated circuit. We'll have a look at the manual a little later on. I think we'll take the lids off. A couple of things: when you get multiple faults like this where several things aren't working, you look for a common factor. So the common factor here is they're all on the front panel. That's the obvious one, and quite possibly they use the same voltage from a regulator. It may even be a negative voltage from a multi-vibrator, something like that. Also, with rigs of this age, you've got to start looking around for leaking capacitors, and leaking capacitors can be a really sign of bad news, because if they've etched the printed circuit away, the electrolyte has that action, then you're looking at quite a difficult repair in some circumstances, may not even be possible. And the other thing we've got to keep in mind is that if it is a volume adjusting chip, multiplexer or whatever, quite possibly gone obsolete. It's quite an old rig. So we'll get the lids off and take another look. So we've took the head off and examined the printed circuit board, both sides, very clean, no signs of leaking capacitors. So now we need to track down exactly what's happening with the volume, squelch and RIT controls. The internal speaker, that was fairly quick. As you can see, there's a wire off, so we'll put that back on. I think we'll get the diagram out, I'll show you later, but we've got to track down how exactly the volume is controlled. Quite likely the volume pot sets an analog voltage on the processor here, you can see, and the processor then sends a digital stream out to control various parts of the radio set, but including in that stream will be the volume setting bits, and we need to find out if the analog voltage is being set. The difficult thing is to look at the data stream to find the right bits to see whether that's being set, and then track down the actual control device on the main board. So I will get back to you when we've reconnected all that up. Okay, so I still haven't got the diagram out. Here you can see the volume and the squelch pot. I've turned those fully anti-clockwise, and I've noticed that when I measure the voltage on each of the pins, we have 5 volts on one end, 5 volts in the middle, and 5 volts on the other end. So I need to get the diagram out to make sure it's referenced to ground, but it looks like we've lost the ground connection in the head somewhere, going to those pots. So best I can do is get the diagram out, and I'll get back to you. So we downloaded the service manual from Mods DK. Thank you very much, Mods DK. And as you can see, each of the twin variable controls plugs into the motherboard, but pin 1 of each is ground, and so we shouldn't have a 5 volt signal on both ends of the pot. We do have VCC. Pin 1 is VCC applied to the top end of each pot, and pin 5 is ground. So that ground signal is obviously missing. So instincts to look at the head first were correct, and I need to take it back apart and find out where that ground signal has got to. So we'll go back to the bench. So the missing ground, this is the volume and squelch pot, this is the RIT, and pin 5 and pin 1 are joined, that's the ground connection, and then the print comes down here to C24 and then comes down to a wire through which the ground is connected underneath on the other side of the printed circuit board. So we have continuity from pin 5 to the top of the wire, but it's not going to ground. And usually what happens is the plating inside the wire corrodes, and eventually there's no link between the top and the bottom of the wire. So I'll whip the board out and just do that test, but we're down to something like 0.15 of a millimetre here, so pinning it through is not going to be possible. We're going to have to put a jumper lead from good ground somewhere back onto the top side to link that out. Just to show you that on the actual radio set, excuse my fumbling, I'm trying to get around the camera. There's a problem, whoops, not good. Okay, so this is C24, and the ground connection is a very fine track down here to this wire. You can see on the printed line, that's the wire that goes to the underside of the board. Try and get that in focus, and it's probably that wire that's corroded. We'll find out very soon. Okay, so we couldn't pin the wire through because the display was covering the top side of the wire, and one of the things you don't want to disturb are this type of display that gets its connections through conductive strips. So we put a jumper wire in to continue that earth onto the top side. So now we have a working squelch and volume and RIT. So we're just going to put it on the test set, make sure that it's on song, transmitting and receiving, and pack it up and ship it back. So that's a typical example of a repair done and dusted within the 1 hour check that we charge $90 for. That'll be of course plus shipping back home.